As I was lazily rolling around in bed, I noticed that my friend Lucas, who was spending the holidays with me at my parents' farm, was not in the room. As I started to sit up to get out of bed, a face appeared in the doorway of my room. "So, what do you want to do today?" Lucas asked, saying, "I'm completely bored." As I looked at him, trying to adjust my eyes to the light, I said, "Let's go for a ride on the ATV." He looked at me with a smile that went from ear to ear and said, "Great," as we were putting on some heavy, warm clothes. Since we were going to a forest and it was the middle of winter, my mother came into the room. "Where are you guys going?" "We're going for a ride." "Well, you need to have breakfast first," she insisted. We devoured breakfast and headed to the garage where the ATV was. We filled it with gas and headed into the woods. The weather was very cold and the forest was slightly foggy. As we drove along the dirt trail, we noticed that the forest was not as lively as it used to be. It was very strange, as if something had scared the wildlife away. As I drove us deeper into the forest, the light was getting dimmer, even though it was still morning. Then, out of nowhere, something fell in front of us, and I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could, missing it by a few inches. It was a piece of a branch. "Are you okay?" Lucas asked. "That was close." "I'm okay, but did you see how big that branch was?" I replied. Lucas laughed, seeing that I was okay. So we continued on our way and continued deeper into the forest. The trail was almost gone, and I had never been that far before. I had no idea where we were. Then at one point we saw an old two-story cabin, which looked like it had been there for decades. It had a porch in the front that had collapsed, and the door was boarded up with wooden planks. "Come on, Fabio, let's take a look at it." "I don't know, man. This doesn't even look like a real cabin. It looks more like a termite mound." "Come on, man, come on. The cabin is fine. Let's take a look." Somewhat reluctantly, I agreed, and we headed towards it. We entered through the window, and as soon as I stepped onto the floor, I was surprised by how sturdy it was. Despite looking like it was over 100 years old and making a few creaks, the cabin was very strong and solid. The lower floor had two parts. One seemed to be the kitchen/living room and had the walls covered in old newspaper. The fireplace had collapsed a long time ago, and the bricks were full of slime. We went to the other room, and there was a spiral staircase in it. With the base cut off, only the top part left. "What could be up there?" Lucas asked with some curiosity. "I don't know." My curiosity had been piqued. "Let's take a look." I supported Lucas so he could reach what was left of the staircase, and as soon as he climbed up, he pulled me so I could take a look up there too. The entire upstairs was one room. The air was very heavy, and it was hard to breathe. There was an old mattress that looked like it had been left behind, and a dark hole in the wall, big enough for someone our size to crawl through. Suddenly we heard the sound of someone walking downstairs. "What was that?" Lucas asked. "I think someone's here." We didn't move, wondering what could be lurking down there in an abandoned cabin in the middle of a forest. Then we both looked at the hole in the wall, and without a word we pointed to it. Lucas went in first, and then inside was a sort of smaller room. It was very small and narrow. It was hard to breathe in there. The air was humid and very stuffy, which didn't help with the terror we were already facing. As we sat there, we started to hear unexplained sounds. First we heard whispers from several people downstairs. Over time the voice got louder and higher pitched. Lucas and I started to panic, wondering if we would get out of the cabin alive. Then we started to hear the footsteps again. Only this time they were heavier and seemed to be coming from the large room upstairs. At that moment the whole house started to shake, as if it were in an earthquake. We started to scream in terror at the possibility of something coming in where we were and getting us. But then the house stopped shaking until it was completely still again. Silence returned. The only thing we could hear was the occasional cracking sound the house made. "I think it's gone," I said. "Let's get out of here." So I crawled out of the hole first. I stood up and started dusting myself off, the one on my clothes. "Oh my God! Let's get out of here!" Lucas screamed. He flew out of the hole. "What happened?" I asked. "There's something in there. I saw it," Lucas replied. My whole body shook, and I felt all my hair stand on end as terror took over me once again. We both jumped to the floor below, and as soon as we got up from the fall, we heard a loud bang upstairs. "Who's there?" I screamed. We only heard silence. Then a shadowy figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It was a grotesque thing that seemed to have deformities all over its body. After about 2 seconds, Lucas and I ran to the window and got out of the cabin as fast as we could. We got on the ATV and took off. I glanced at the old cabin and saw a dark figure in the second-floor window. The moment I looked at that thing, I noticed something strange in its expression. She looked sad and lonely, but I didn't think much about it until I got to the farm. "What happened to you?" my mother asked in shock when she saw the dust on our clothes. We then told her about the old cabin we had gone into to see what was inside, but we decided not to tell her anything that could be considered paranormal activity because she might not understand. To this day, Lucas and I talk about what happened that Saturday morning. He told me that when he was alone in the hole, he felt what seemed to be a human hand grab his leg. I have come to the conclusion that there are still things on this earth left for us to discover and understand. And most importantly, I now believe that the paranormal exists for better or for worse. I am still baffled by what happened to Lucas and me that day, and we will never forget that experience.